Welcome to the Love and Victory Show with Val, the place to laugh, sip on a little wine, and have open and honest conversation. Here you will find the tools to resolve real life issues. Unwind, pour up a glass, and get ready to exhale. Welcome to the Love and Victory Show with Val's podcast. And today's conversation is going to be stop saying sorry. Why do we say sorry? We're going to dig into that today. Why do we feel the need to say I'm sorry? I'm going to be having this discussion today with Lacey Schmidt. Did I say that right? Did I get it right?
Schmidt.
Schmidt.
It's a little hard, but there's a baseball player. A lot of people know Mike Schmidt.
Oh, okay.
So it's just like that.
Just like that. Well, again, I apologize for chopping your name up. If there's a name, I'm going to chop it up. So please forgive me for that. Lacey is familiar to the family. She has been on the radio show, and now she is sitting here as a guest, and I feel she is the perfect person to help us stop saying we're sorry. And I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself. Lacey, tell the people about yourself. And who are you? Who are you?
That could take days to answer in of itself. Probably the most relevant thing people should know is that I'm an industrial organizational psychologist. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people know psychologists from TV with the couches and such. That's not me. Mm-hmm. I'm the other flavor of psychologist you never see on TV. I ride along with people who perform very dangerous professions or complicated professions and figure out how they do their jobs, why they're good at it, who's successful and why, and how to hire and train people to be even more successful in the future in that job and avoid dangerous outcomes from dangerous work like burnout or or injury or
I guess when I think
depression.
So when I think of that, so you guys probably work with, what are the air traffic control? You've worked with them? Because that is definitely a very stressful job.
NASA, I did astronaut selection and training for a decade. Mm-hmm. Work with a lot of hospitals and emergency room staff. Mm-hmm. Basically, if it's either a high-risk job or if somebody does their job wrong, they could kill somebody, mm-hmm. or it's an environment where you have to live and work in the job, like Antarctic expeditioners, military, firefighters, police officers, those kinds of things. Well, and as a class, IO psychologists are all pretty much focused on preventative, we're studying behavior in the workplace to prevent bad things from happening, rather than treat them. So I know about depression from the perspective of preventing it, not treating it.
Okay.
Right.
So as you can see, she is definitely someone that can have this conversation with us. And I like the fact that you said that your profession, you kind of focus more on preventing. Okay. And since we're talking about stop saying I'm sorry, I want you to help us prevent from saying I'm sorry so much, because I think there are times that we have to apologize. And so I'm not saying that it's anything wrong with apologizing. But if you always lead with I'm sorry, doesn't that become somewhat of a mindset? And what I mean by that is, if I'm always saying I'm sorry, isn't that a little defeating in itself?
Absolutely. Okay. There's a fine line. Of course, when you do something wrong, mm-hmm. it's very important to admit that I was wrong and I'm sorry.
And own it, yes.
And to try and make reparations, right? Mm-hmm. But the point at which you've made reparations and somebody isn't, or attempted to, and somebody's not ready or willing to accept that, then it's time to stop apologizing.
Mm-hmm. Because I think sometimes people use that very thing against you. What I mean by that is, if I have really went to a person and said, I'm sorry, I know that I did something wrong, and I went with a very sincere heart and apologized. Yes, it's up to the other individual to accept it whenever they're ready to accept it.
But if they're ever
ready to accept it. But I am not required to continue every time I'm in your space. I'm sorry. Or should I?
No, I mean, you shouldn't, right? It's almost car salesperson-y, right? To persist.
Yes.
You must buy my apology. You
Yes.
must buy my apology. And
Yes.
that in itself is damaging to the relationship. And obviously, if you have a legitimate reason to apologize already, there has been a break in trust in the relationship, and you can't force somebody to forgive that break in trust. That's not how you
you're
earn.
just ready
Right.
to
That's not how
move
you
on.
earn trust back.
Right.
You apologize, you make reparations, and you demonstrate that you will behave differently going forward. And that is
And
the way
that's
to
through
repair
an
it.
action.
If the trust can be repaired, that is the way to repair it.
Oh,
Right.
wow. I love that. Well, I have a couple of questions, and you know how I do it. I just throw it on out there, and we just go from there in a conversation. Why do you think people, especially women, are so quick to apologize?
I know for myself that part of it was cultural training, right? You know, Texas gal, raised by a Texas gal, you know, you apologize anytime you put your needs before somebody else's, right? Because we're supposed to put everybody's needs before our own.
So you think that that's a little of the Southern upbringing that we have been taught in this geographical area, is to apologize, women especially, because men don't do it.
Some men do. It's interesting, but yes, I think in particular, for me, that was the case. I don't know. It could be geographically. Did you get that same?
I do. I think that it's just it's almost like a lady is supposed to be a lady, and a woman is supposed to just be this soft person that's
nurturing,
always nurturing.
And I put your needs first
and forget mine. And I think you grow up with that, just like with when you're a little girl, you fall. We cuddle, it's going to be okay. So we're teaching them that. Then we say to the young man that fell, get up, you're all right, go ahead, pop him on his head and go ahead and go play. You get what I'm saying? So I think it's something that is indoctrinated in the kids, the girls, early on. That's my thought.
And it's a shorthand for us, right?
Yeah.
We apologize for making you feel bad.
Yes.
We apologize for not putting you first, which, you know, may be polite, but again, once is enough, right?
We apologize for, I didn't like your meal, but I took the time to cook it. Why am I saying sorry when I poured my heart out trying to fix a nice meal?
Right.
And again, I have to agree with you. I think it goes back to kind of the way we were trained coming up.
And I think for me, I broke this, thankfully, because I did have to be educated as a psychologist.
Yes.
And you know, I do have to hear stories where people are just brutalized, right? By their work, by their experience. You know, a veteran talking about combat and all the horrible things that happened to them as a consequence of doing their job. And I am sorry for them.
Yes.
You know, I have to have that empathy
You
component.
have that empathy for them, yes.
But if I want to help them, I can't say I'm sorry to them every time we meet, right?
No.
That's not going to be productive. Same thing with raising a child, right?
Yes.
I can't tell I'm sorry that this happened to you, yes.
But do you also...
But I've said that once, and now I can't encourage you to wallow in this misery, or we're never going to get anywhere. Something horrible did happen to you. Of course I'm sorry. Of course I know that's hard, whether or not I understand why.
I violated your trust.
Sure.
I violated your trust. I'm sorry for violating and crossing the line of your trust. But do we keep going there?
How do we move on from
How do we move on from there? And I kind of want to go into the stance of us as women feeling the need to overly apologize. Let's talk about it in the workplace. Your boss comes up to you. Your boss has, the last minute, has asked you to work late on an assignment. You stay in and you say, okay, but you know in your heart you're not able because you have other commitments. And so you can't stay late. But because you don't want to let your boss down, to your boss's face you say, yes, I can do that. It's not a problem. But behind the scenes, to your coworkers and your peers, you're saying something else. What is that all about?
Well, you know, we all have a image we want to maintain, right? And we all want to perform well and earn that promotion and earn that raise. And it's very hard to show vulnerability. And I think that's a lot of it, right?
That's it, yeah.
Shame and vulnerability get in our way a lot at work. And you cannot be a top performer. This is a hard lesson even for, say, astronaut applicants to learn, because you have folks who have 2 or 3 degrees,
Yes, they're
maybe
brilliant.
4 degrees,
Mhm.
experienced combat pilots and such.
Right.
They've never let anyone down, right? Or
Mhm.
never felt like they've
Yeah.
let anyone down. And suddenly we're telling them that to survive in an extreme environment like space, you have to realize that a lot of things are out of your control.
Mhm.
Things you're going to feel guilty and ashamed for, but you still have to realize, just like on an airplane, you got to put your own mask on first
Yes.
if things go wrong. You have to do self-care
love
or you
that.
can't do team care. And it's the same thing when we apologize in the workplace. We're trying to maintain this image, but that's hurting the team.
That's hurting the team.
Your boss does not have information that she needs
Mhm.
to know that these are your limitations and capabilities right now. That, yes, I desperately want to do this and I want to perform well, but I already have commitments tonight.
And I can't do this. And I think that's...
And it will ruin the quality of my product if I take this on.
I love that because
Give your boss the space to negotiate, right? Because
Right.
maybe your boss would rather say, well, it doesn't matter the quality, I desperately need it, so if you cancel your plans tonight, then you can have tomorrow off.
Or
right?
your boss may
And I
say-
recognize you're doing me a favor,
Yes.
or vice versa. I don't want the quality of this product to suffer. There
Let's-
is a deadline tomorrow, but I can buy us more time and push it.
And I think that goes back to communicating,
Right.
effective communication. Okay.
You're cheating your boss out of that chance to communicate and negotiate a better solution for everybody by withholding that information and apologizing.
But you're also cheating
Right.
yourself because now you have committed to something that you know is going to cause problems for you personally, which you're going to bring that angst over into your job.
Into your home, sure.
Into your
Right.
home, yeah.
You've messed with more than your team at work.
Right.
You've messed with your team at home, your family.
Yes, yes. I love that. Okay. We use sorry almost as a filler word. What is the effect of this, and does this make the word sorry have less meaning and value?
Absolutely. I mean, I think so. You probably think so, but research backs us up as well, right?
Mhm.
If you say something all the time,
It means nothing.
it means nothing. So if you're using sorry as a filler, then when you need to apologize, you better use a different word.
You better use a different word.
Because everybody who knows you has learned that that's a filler word for you.
And let's talk about the filler word. And let's talk about it in relationships. If you're constantly hearing, are you married?
Yes.
Okay, I'm married. And there was a time we were dating, Abigail's dating. She's always in the room. But anyway, when you're dating or you're in a relationship, if you're constantly saying to your mate or your mate saying to you, I'm sorry, it becomes numb. So you're literally, I believe what happens is it breaks down the fiber of that relationship. Wouldn't you say?
Whether it breaks down the fiber or not, we have a kind of saying among psychologists, if you're saying sorry all the time, that's a giant red flag in any relationship. Why are you sorry all the time?
Wow. Okay, can you break that down from all the way down?
If you feel the need to have a negative filler word like that repeatedly, why are you feeling that need?
And why do people feel that need?
It varies, right? And that's why
Give
it's
us an
very
example.
important to ask yourself that question and be honest with yourself, right? A lot of people will say, oh, because my boyfriend's a jerk, which is potentially a
True.
revelation, right? Then why are you dating a jerk?
Yes, so that
why
it
are
still
you
goes
married
back to
it?
you, yes.
Right. But 9 times out of 10, what it is I'm letting shame and vulnerability get in my way. And I am diminishing myself. Right?
Wow.
Why are you diminishing yourself? What hurt, what psychological or emotional hurt have you not processed that is making you feel so defensive you have to apologize so much?
Let's go to the ones that never can apologize. Have you experienced that or never take ownership of things that they may have done wrong or someone perceived that they've done wrong? They just never own it. How do you deal
I'm
with
going to own this and say there is no person on the planet who has not done this.
Right.
Right? It's not a person, it's not a characteristic of a person or a personality factor. It's a behavior we all fall prey to when we're in a spot right? When we're in a spot where our ego is severely threatened, or our life or a traumatic experience that we don't want to deal with yet is threatening us, this is the kind of behavior. So if somebody refuses to accept and apologize for something they've done wrong, it's because they don't have the emotional or psychological capability to do that right now.
Oh, wow. So could that be that it's something that's going on with that individual at that particular time? And
it is something that's going on with that individual. Does that mean you should give them free pass? No. Absolutely not. That becomes the point at which you have to question yourself and say, am I safe with this individual? Do I need to distance from this person until they can reach a place where they can process and own this apology?
Is there a diagnosis for someone like that?
Well, because it can be many different things causing it, right? It could be the fact that they're depressed. It could be related to post-traumatic stress syndrome. You know, it could be any number of things. So there's no like specific diagnosis
for that.
It could just be that they're highly ashamed that they messed up. You see this all the time with athletes,
I like
right?
that, yes.
You see this with politicians. They know they messed up, but they refuse to publicly apologize.
Yeah.
Right. It's easier and safer for their career to double down and just tell another lie.
But is it really safer?
They perceive it as.
Okay, there you go.
Right.
There you go. They perceive it as being safe when in fact the person on the other side clearly knows that it's a lie. And you're but some people give
right.
into it.
And does everybody know it's a lie?
That's
right.
true.
This is why you see a lot of people continue to burn bridges, because I know, hey, doesn't matter if people in Houston know I'm a liar. I'm going to move to D.C. in 3 months, and nobody there knows me, and they're going to believe whatever I put on my resume.
Oh, wow.
I think you see an instance of this with George Santos,
yes.
right?
Oh, my God. Yes, exactly. Because
why own it? Because at this point, owning any of that stuff
I'm not going to be held accountable for it.
Would surely end his political career, right?
But hasn't his political career,
that's debatable,
That's
right?
debatable because he's still in there.
The public has a very short memory.
They do.
And a lot of folks who are 16 right now and will be voters in 2 years won't remember a dang thing.
That is so true right there. That is. Do you ever catch yourself over apologizing? And how do you combat this?
I do catch myself over apologizing, especially when I feel physically threatened, when somebody's yelling at me. My reflex is to apologize, right? Whether I'm in the right or wrong.
I can't even see anyone yelling at you.
It's almost a defensive thing, right?
You're so sweet. I mean, I can't imagine someone yelling at you. Honestly, I can't but I know people can just be jerks. So your defense would be to apologize, to make them feel comfortable.
Sure, I think, right, we all have this.
Or is it a diffuser?
It's called fight or flight response, but there's also a third response that's often not talked about, but is part of it, which is freeze, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. And a lot of folks who are smaller in stature, like myself, I'm not a big woman.
Yes.
I will freeze and apologize to buy myself more time in a dangerous situation,
Okay.
And to make myself appear even smaller and less threatening, right?
Wow. It's funny you say that, because I think for myself, and I don't know if it has to do, because I'm a tall lady, and so I have no problem with apologizing, but in a situation, same situation, I don't think I would overly apologize. And I don't know if that's because of my height or the stubbornness, but I am getting to a place now, because people are so unhinged, that I find myself, it's okay. Not necessarily apologizing, but trying to figure out ways to diffuse a situation versus going back and forth with people, because
absolutely, and that's a survival skill, right?
Yes.
But again, the words "I'm sorry" are probably not the best go-to.
Right.
It's okay to say, "You seem very upset, and I'm sorry that you're upset. What's happening with you, or what's going on?"
Or is there something I can do to help you? That's a better word. Okay. What does it mean to live your life unapologetically? That's a good one there.
It is a good one, and I think probably one of the best answers I've heard comes from a researcher, Brene Brown, out of the School of Social Work at the University of Houston. She's done a lot of research on shame and vulnerability and published quite a few good books about the subject. And one of those is Dare to Lead. It's a pretty good leadership book that talks about what it means to be unapologetic and also what it means to own your leadership roles. And I think that's a lot of it. To live unapologetically is to own what's unique about you without fear.
Okay. So when we talk about what's unique, if that same word, what's unique about you?
What isn't unique about
What
me?
is unique about you that most people wouldn't know?
I think one of the things I had trouble owning for a long time, I was diagnosed as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder when I was 20 by accident.
By accident.
By accident. At this point, I was already in college. I had done almost 2 successful years on a scholarship, academic scholarship. So it was really weird to hear that you might have a problem focusing and you're a little hyperactive. But I have a full academic ride.
Yes. What are you
I've got
talking about?
4.0.
What are you talking about? Right.
But, there was a lot of denial there for me, but I lucked out and had a therapist, a clinical psychologist who was smart enough to ask the right questions about, this is not necessary. It's named a disorder, but it's not necessarily something wrong with you. Right? There are things about this uniqueness that give you superpowers. And he challenged me to really look at my life and what are those uniqueness. And at the time, who has it together when they're 20, right? Who wants to be different? You don't. You want to fit in. You want to have the common experience. And so did I do a great job of it at that point of owning it? No, but it started a seed that has enabled me to grow to this point today where it's a selling point for me, right? When I walk in as an executive to an organization and negotiate for a job in the C-suite, I'm upfront about it at this point. Hey, I have ADHD, and guess what? That's associated with higher entrepreneurism, more vision, more imagination, better problem solving, faster problem solving.
Come on, break all of that.
Being able to handle multiple projects at once, all of that, right?
Yes.
I own that now because it's
a gift.
It's a differentiator, right? This is how I'm different than the other executives applying for this job.
Wow, I love it. And it's so funny you say that. Because
and if that's not something you need,
then I'm not the person for it. And I'm not going to be ashamed
because there's someone who needs that skill set.
Yes.
and will pay me for it.
It's actually funny that you say that because I have the same attention deficit. We talk about that. And I'm very transparent with my team. And so one of the things with that is I'm always having multiple things going on. And it's not that... and I'm always very creative, always looking for, and you just kind of you just broke it down for me. I never even really thought about it that way. But what are some of those great traits again that I have that you have? Can you say it again for those that are listening in the back of the room?
There's some great research. You can find all kinds of interesting articles that have been written in the last decade about what advantages does ADHD offer, not just the business world, but society as a whole. We are creative thinkers. We do we don't know there is a box.
Right.
So thinking outside the box is not a problem
for us because we're always.
You just have to tell us where the box is and that there is one.
Put us back in the box, right? Because we don't want to be inside of that box. That's really good.
And you'll see a lot of successful people have since admitted it or shared their diagnoses.
I think that back in our days, I don't know your age, and I don't have a problem with sharing mine, but almost 60. And I think back in my days when I was in school, never was diagnosed, didn't know it, and as I got older, still didn't know it. But finding out, I think you had shame because you didn't know how other people were going to view you. And then when you started to talk about it, I found that there are some people that would take that very same thing and try to make you look bad, but they don't realize that they make themselves look bad. And so I'm at a point in my life where I'm very candid about it. I'm very open about it because there's no shame associated with it. Actually, I'm a very gifted woman.
It's very hard to use something against you that you've stated publicly as your truth.
Yes, it's very hard.
Right?
Yeah.
It just makes somebody look petty when they try to take advantage of a public truth that emblazoned on your resume. Right?
And I think the one thing that makes it so great, I've never heard what you just said, and actually I'm sitting over here in this bright yellow today, just feeling so excited. I've never heard that people with attention, ADD, yeah, those initials.
ADHD is
ADHD,
the new,
yeah. I've
new
never
configuration
exactly.
of it.
I've never heard those great traits that you just shared, and I definitely want us, if you don't mind, look to that camera right there. And if you could, there is someone listening over here that may be struggling with that, or they may feel a little ashamed, but they may be thinking about going into their own business and questioning whether or not they can do it. Can you tell them those great traits?
Sure. Some of the great traits associated with ADHD in particular are creativity, the ability to handle multiple projects, entrepreneurship. We're visionaries. We oftentimes find unique solutions to the problem that no one else has even imagined. And I'd say that's probably our biggest, right? Mm-hmm. We have such creativity, and there is high incidence, I believe, I'd have to look back to be sure, but I think around 80% of folks who decide to be small business owners or go out on their own and create a business have ADHD or some other form of neurodiversity.
Wow.
So
that's something.
It's the fact that we have something a little different about us that makes us willing to take that leap because it's exciting, right? It's interesting, and we have that extra creativity and that drive necessary to make a good go of it.
And if you're someone out there right now, or you may have a child that you're looking at, and he or she has been diagnosed with that diagnosis, don't feel like it's over for your child. You have two successful women here that is sitting here that are highly intelligent, that took a chance on their selves. And of course, we've had support along the way. And there are times we didn't have support. But I have a unique gift, and I don't know if you've experienced it. I can look at a problem. I can walk in and look at a problem, and instantaneously, I can figure out a way to fix it. Where other people have been in this problem for a long time, and they struggle with fixing it.
I got in so much trouble in school in math classes because I would go straight to the answer, and they'd say, show your steps, and I couldn't.
Exactly.
Or I'd show 2 out of 5 steps because I skipped the rest in my head.
And it's so funny because it's not like you are cutting corners. It's just something about looking at a problem and then just able to figure it out. Now, with that being said, I know our conversation is about stop saying we're sorry, but you've taken me in a whole nother direction, and I'm going to come back to stop saying we're sorry. Well, maybe we need to stop saying we're sorry when we find out that we're a little different.
Right.
Because I
think that's a big one, right?
Yes,
we say we're sorry because we're different, or we're afraid of disappointing somebody.
Yes. But it's nothing wrong with being different.
You haven't actually done anything wrong at that point. You don't have anything to apologize for yet.
And it's nothing wrong. If we all were the same, then where would this world be?
Right.
And it's our creativity and our differences that make it better.
And the only time you should apologize for a need is when you hide it.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry I hid this need from you, but to be successful in this workplace, I need X.
I need to share this.
Because unless you share that, you are damaging the team. And it's okay to apologize for not sharing.
Yes. I think that's one of the things that I made it a point with my team from the onset. I let them know my shortcomings. I also let them know that when I'm stressed, and I don't know if you've experienced this, when I'm stressed, you can see it more. And so when I'm stressed, I tend to fall back on things like maybe writing something, reading something, because everything just becomes a jumbled mess. And so, but I've learned to just kind of relax and just stay in my lane. And that's why God put the right people around you that can really pick up where you left off at.
It does. You will find yourself gravitating toward people who allow you the room to be yourself, right? It's more attractive to be around those people, and that's okay.
Yes.
Because they are the ones who are most likely to form a great team with you.
Yes.
And trying to fit yourself into something you're not only harms you, which is what we as women are apologizing
right,
for, right?
right.
Like, I'm sorry, I can't take this punishment,
right,
and perform anyway,
right.
But what we're really doing is trashing everybody's ability to perform, right? And trashing every opportunity we take, we have to sacrifice another opportunity to take. So if you're in a relationship with somebody else who cannot support what you need, you're robbing yourself, but you're also robbing them of being with somebody who's a better fit.
And that, taking that on into relationships, just hearing that, I think a lot of times you don't want to leave out of a relationship because you feel like you're cheating them or you're afraid you're going to lose something. But staying in that relationship is just as bad to both people.
Right. And that's that red flag, right?
Yes.
Why are you maybe the other person is fantastic.
Yes.
And it's not that they're a jerk, but you're still apologizing a lot because you don't feel like you live up to what you should be to be with them.
And maybe that's not who you should be with.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not because they're a jerk that you shouldn't be with them. It's because y'all aren't the best fit.
Y'all not the best fit, and be okay with that.
And there is somebody out there who is a good fit. I promise.
You.
It
Yes.
doesn't always feel like it.
Well,
there's somebody out there you won't have to apologize to.
Exactly. Well, Abigail is always in the room. And Abigail is sitting over there, and I know she's going to throw a question or two at us both. What do you have for us?
So we talked a little bit about apologizing and kind of, how you can be maybe a little more sincere, not over apologizing. What is your advice on accepting apologies? Because I think some people struggle to accept as well.
Oh,
wow.
Sure. Don't we all struggle to accept an apology? And think about this, too. Why are the reasons, why do you have a hard time accepting some apologies?
Well, I'll just tell you from me. I think that when I've heard a person apologize and apologize and apologize and they've done nothing to correct the behavior, I don't hear you anymore. I completely it's nothing. Mm-hmm. So that part for me is very difficult when we're still talking about the same thing, the same behavior, or the same, it's the same, so I can't accept it. Mm-hmm. Is that wrong? Do I need to go and see a counselor for that?
No, I mean, that's kind of the key rule, right? We have, most of the time, all of us have problems accepting apologies we perceive to be insincere.
Yes. So
the question is, why do you perceive that apology to be insincere?
And for me, if you continue
and when you
to
yourself apologize,
mm-hmm.
are
you sincere?
Well, not just are you sincere, because a lot of times, right, we feel very sincere.
Mm-hmm.
I get in an argument with my spouse and I say I'm sorry, I definitely mean it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that my sincerity has been communicated.
That's a good question, because what are you projecting out when you're saying you're sorry? If I'm saying,
assuming you're married to a reasonable person, which you probably are if you're married.
Yes. I think you met him on the radio, Brother Carter. Right. Yes.
There's probably a reason you're not coming across as sincere.
Well, I'm not, when I'm bringing this up, I'm not saying toward him.
I mean toward anybody, right?
Yes. So
like,
if
whether it be a spouse or a boss or a child or anybody, right? If your apology is being rejected.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Because you're not coming across.
There's two basic things to check. Number one is, am I really coming across as sincere, or am I doing something that I would perceive to be insincere if the roles were reversed? Am I just repeating I'm sorry? I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry? Or am I, because a lot of what people think makes an apology sincere is when you say why you're sorry. Yes. What are you sorry for?
For me,
your behavior, not I'm sorry, I'm hyperactive. That doesn't sound sincere, right? I'm sorry I interrupted you when you were trying to tell me about this safety issue.
Because now you expressed specific. Exactly.
That's a behavior, right?
And that's something that I tend to want to hear when someone apologizes, or when I apologize. I like to give context to what I'm apologizing, or when it's being done to me. Okay, so what are you apologizing for? Right.
So, I agree. I'm the same way. When someone apologizes to me, like I want you to know what you did.
Yes.
I generally give people the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
I know what you did wrong. Do you know what you did wrong? Do you know? But I think that rubs a lot of people the wrong way, because that's how I apologize. And I've gotten feedback before that and it's kind of that debate with impact versus intent. You know, and kind of like I've been told before, like I don't care about the reason, I just want to hear that you're sorry.
Okay,
Which is okay, but it's still important for you
Yes.
to say the reason for yourself.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you for saying it.
And it's also important to point out, you know, like in my example, I didn't just point out the behavior I did. I
Right.
pointed out why that behavior, why I thought that behavior
was appropriate.
made you angry, right? Because you were trying to tell me about an important safety issue. Right. So now I've told you about the behavior and the impact I thought it had that you were upset about. And it's also, we tend to think it's more sincere if I tell you what I'm going to do to fix it. So intention, impact, fix it, right?
Result.
So I'm sorry I interrupted you when you were trying to tell me about an important safety thing. I realized that might have ended up hurting us both. And next time I'm going to try to ask you, is this a safety issue, before I steamroll you.
And I do think a lot of that goes back to the individual that is either willing or unwilling to accept. And now we all have different ways that we need to be communicated to in the way we communicate. The flip side of that is we have a responsibility, not just to the person we're talking to, but we also have a responsibility to ourselves to communicate our needs.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have a responsibility when you apologize, whether the other person wants to hear those things or not. Making it a point to include those things will ensure that the majority of people you apologize to will know you're sincere.
Yes, yes.
And those who don't want to hear that, it's not because they don't need that information, it's because something's going on with them, right?
I really
They're
like
too
that.
angry to hear about what behavior you did wrong, right? And
They just
that's-
want you to know you did something wrong.
Right. But including that information isn't necessarily bad at that point. It's good for you, if nothing else, right? And it may be good for them too at some point, because some point they're going to cool off and they're going to think, well, she just said she was sorry. She didn't actually know what she was sorry for, so she must not mean it. But instead they're going to go, well, actually, she did tell me what she was, what she
Yes.
did.
Well, and it puts it into perspective too. If someone hurts me, I want to know, like, what was your thought process? Like,
Yes.
did you mean to hurt me? Did you mean something else? You know, I feel like that's important too.
And
in
I
context.
personally don't see anything wrong
And
with
that's a better way. I'm sorry, but I have to point this
Yeah, go
out
ahead,
because
go
that's a
ahead.
brilliant way to say, do you know what you did wrong? Because that's a trigger. Do you know what you did wrong? Well, no. If I knew what I did wrong, I wouldn't have done it, right?
Right.
That just makes the person you want an apology from angry, right? And defensive.
So that's a trigger.
Right. So if you want a sincere apology, it's better not to leave the person guessing. I'm really upset that you interrupted me, right? That way you're not playing a guessing game. What did I do to make Lacey mad?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I actually like that. But I think a lot of times it goes back to us as women, where a man is not going to necessarily apologize or walk away from something that makes them feel uncomfortable, where some women feel the need to just kind of fall back and revert back into this thing. Okay, it's just happening. Let's let it move on. Let's let it go. And I think that's unhealthy for the individual that does that.
Yes, but some of that I feel is biological, right? Like you're not gonna get rid of all the programming as a
That's
woman that, you know, biologically we're programmed to be more nurturing. We have to be mothers, so a large
But don't
portion
you
of us
think
have that instinct to try to make things better, to be the mediator, to be the nurturer.
But eventually, as you get older, you kind of move a little bit from that, a little more from that, because
You
then
learn what the boundaries of
there
that are.
you go.
What healthy boundaries of that
yes,
are, right?
yes, and you tend to be okay with saying, "Now I need you to understand when you did this. This is how it made me feel. This is what I need for you when you're communicating to me about something like this." I think that sets up a much healthier relationship.
And there's a great book by Harriet Lerner,
Harriet Lerner.
Why won't they apologize, or something along those lines? Why won't he or she apologize? And it brings up a lot of good points. You cannot demand an apology, right? You are never going to be satisfied if you have to ask for an apology.
Oh, I like that right there. Because if you have to ask for it, and what I'm saying,
There's no way that person can apologize in a way you're going to accept if you had to ask for it.
you know, and when I'm speaking and I'm saying we, me, I'm not speaking in about any individual, myself or Dr. Schmidt. There you go, that name, I'll tear it up. I'm just really talking, I love to put it in to make it personal. When that's being said, I think that we need to do, and as you're doing now, be open enough to just, like you said, don't do the trigger things. Because if you allow them, if you give the triggers, then they're going to focus on the triggers versus the problem. And how do you have a conversation, or how do you communicate? When you did this is how you made me feel. Is that a good way? Or
I have a little bit of issue with the how you made me feel. Nobody can make you feel anything.
Okay, I like that.
Right?
So what's the better way to
keep
communicate?
it simple and easy, right? The KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, right? I was hurt when you did X, right? I take the responsibility for my emotions, right? But I'm letting you know that behavior, I interpret it this way, right?
That's really good. That's really good.
And at that point, I have to allow you to say, well, that's not how I intended that behavior. Because that's the start of an apology, right? And a lot of times people will cut somebody apologizing off. Well, it doesn't matter what you intended. This is what I felt. That's a bit psychotic on you,
yeah,
right?
That's on you. That part right there is
that's
on
attacking on you. You're so emotional that you can't listen to the person tell you what they actually intended.
Wow.
Right.
That's
and
really
you need
good.
to take a step back and say, okay, well, maybe what they intended, maybe I still want an apology, but I have to consider what they really intended, and that maybe this was a communication error. Maybe I did interpret things.
And would you think
You
that
know.
sometimes it's not necessarily the right time when you're in when there's a lot of emotion, high emotions, to sit down and try to have a conversation, because you're going to really still be speaking from emotion versus listening to fix the problem? Do you think it's better to kind of just say, well, let's just table this for right now and come back to the conversation when we both are in?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right. I think it's very important to consider your own emotionality for sure. One of the hallmarks of ADHD is we're more emotionally labile.
Yes.
We get excited, and that is a bad time
To talk.
for me to try to apologize to you or to try to listen to your apology, right? And it's not a bad coping mechanism to say, you know what, I'm feeling a little excited right now, and I don't think it's a good time for me to like honestly hear you well. So can we do this tomorrow, at lunch or whatever it is? You're not copping out if you ask for a timeout and you make an appointment
to deal with
at a better time, right? It's only a cop out if you say, I can't deal with this right now, and walk out of the room.
Yeah.
That's poor behavior, right? That's not saying why you need it or how you're going to fix it again.
That's literally you just copping out and not wanting to
Right.
deal with it.
I need a timeout so that I can be less excited and hear you better.
If you
I think I'll be in a good space to do this tomorrow or this evening, or, when's convenient for you. I need an hour. When can we come back after that? That's good for you.
If you can leave our listeners with one thing to change a behavior that's almost become a habit of saying I'm sorry, what would you leave them with to change or stop?
The number one hardest thing to do is to notice and admit you're over apologizing. So if you can just put a little pause in and say, is this the first time I've apologized? Or do I know what I'm apologizing for? When you start to hear the words come out of your mouth, or even when you're telling your self-talk in your head, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Why are you saying that in your head? And just take 15 seconds, doesn't have to take long. Why am I apologizing? Is this the first time I've apologized? Is there some pattern here?
Is it a reason that I feel the need to just keep apologizing? I like that. Okay, before we go, Abigail, you have any other questions for us?
I am.
Okay, then. I've really enjoyed having this conversation. Yes, it was something short, it was a good conversation on apologizing. I think we as women, I think we as the human race really need to kind of step back. And if you're going to apologize, figure out what you're apologizing for, be clear about it, and then be sincere in it. Not being sincere with apology you'll just stick out like a sore thumb, and all you're doing is hurting the relationship worse. So would you tell them a little bit more about you? How can they find you? I know that we're going to put it at the end of our video, but tell the people a little bit about you and where they can find you at.
Sure. I'm Dr. Lacey Schmidt, and you can find me as a consultant, executive coach, and teamwork trainer at thewisdomthatworks.com. All one word.
I think that there are so many businesses out there, large practices, small practices, that can definitely use you in the workplace. Because even in the workplace, sometimes we find ourselves apologizing, but really not changing anything. And I think that's a learned behavior, or that's a behavior that you kind of came here with that's never been broken. Reach out to Dr. Schmidt. I'm going to tear it up.
Dr. Schmidt.
Dr. Schmidt. I got it right.
And we definitely see that in executive coaching. There are a heck of a lot of female leaders out there struggling to not over-apologize and struggling with things like imposter syndrome or imposter phenomena, which leads to over-apologizing and shame and hiding your vulnerabilities.
And I think, again,
these are real issues.
These are real issues, and I think we have to just really, honestly, as women and as men, really just take the time to really look inward at ourselves and ask ourselves, why am I doing this? It's okay to ask yourself, why? Why do I continue to get angry? Why am I always saying sorry? Why does that trigger me? And I think hopefully getting in touch with someone like you to help you break that all the way down.
Yeah, and I think too there's a tradition, especially in Christianity, right, of turning the other cheek.
Yes.
So there is a form of apology that's not only appropriate but required of us all to live a good life.
Right.
But if you are saying you're sorry in a way that does not communicate your sincerity,
then are you really
serving
God? Are you really doing what you're saying you're doing? And that is really trying to be a better Christian. I have to question. Are you? Ask yourself that question.
Yeah, it's not enough to say you're sorry if you're trying to follow in Jesus' footsteps.
I love that.
The quality of your apology determines its sincerity. And there are elements that you can definitely learn that make a quality apology.
Wow. What a great way to end this conversation. I would like to thank you, Lacey, for coming on and just having this conversation, being so relaxed. I love you every time you come. Stop saying sorry. It's so important. I mean, it's nothing wrong with apologizing, but just stop saying sorry all the time. If you're going to say I'm sorry, know why you're saying it, and then put some content behind it. Until next time, we love you. Bye-bye.